Now, some final comments about using the printC argument. Number one, where to find an output. In my example, the argument, the argument when I used it with the frequency C function outputted the table and figure to my documents folder. That was my default working directory when I was creating that output. Yours might be different, so read the note in the console when you're using the function to find where it's outputted and then navigate to that directory or folder. To stay organized, you can always use the set WD function to set your working directory. If you want to store the HTML files and image files in a directory other than your default working directory. You might also rename the table output files. By default, the functions, when using the printC argument, create a table.output file with the current date in the file name. If you want to distinguish your work, you can rename that. I might have, if I was with that public approval of the ACA example, I might rename that HTML file to something that references the public approval or the ACA to distinguish it from other table outputs I might create. Note that the style of the tables may vary. The table in my example from the frequency C function is the style of the table, the class of the object in the R environment is somewhat specific, so it allows us in the HTML file to create a structured table. However, not all output in the R environment is structured as a data frame or a table. Some of the output is just lines of text outputted, and the printC function, when it's used in that instance, will capture the lines of text generated in the console, but we'll do it in just in kind of a basic, almost like a paragraph looking form. So it'll vary somewhat from the table in that instance will vary in style from the example. It's captured, but doesn't have as much formatting. The image files are saved in a PNG format, and they're going to appear in the working directory. If you look closely in the console, it'll tell you the image name. Like in the example, you'll see a thumbnail preview in the HTML file. And if you click the thumbnail preview, it will take you to a larger version of the image file of the plot. And then from there, if you want to insert that into a presentation or a paper, you can just simply add the multimedia from your working directory, add that PNG file into the presentation or paper. Check out the notes. When you run a function with the printC argument, it adds some notes in fine print to tell you when you ran the argument, when you ran the function that created the output, and also the command used to create the output. Really, that's intended, for future use and future reference for how you did something or when you did something. Generally, those notes you might not put into a paper or a presentation. Depending on the context, you might, but probably not. In my example, I did that more to show how notes would be formatted and use the notes that we automatically generated as the example. But the notes can be really helpful to the user to try to recreate something you had done in the past. So the argument, when used, is very helpful. I think it eliminates a lot of busy work in creating formatted tables, but in most instances, it won't be the final version of the table that you want to create. It's not meant to create fully publication ready tables. It's meant to be a time saver for the busy work. And when I use that digits argument, that's also, I think, a huge time saver, to have R round off the number of decimal places to, the right number, or add decimal places in some instances. To have R do that is a huge time saver, but that doesn't necessarily create your final table. You'll still want to do some work past that. Now, I should say that there are a good number of R packages that create publication ready tables, particularly using the LaTeX format, but it gets a lot more complicated in terms of the settings and then managing the output. So the printC isn't as overall helpful as some other functions are, but it's helpful in a very simple way where we're can generate some very helpful tables in an HTML file format with just setting a basic argument equal to true and having that consistent throughout the different functions that use it. And then for further formatting, I recommend doing the further formatting in your Word document. Obviously, if you want to get into more sophisticated um, table formatting and formatting of results for publications, by all means do that. This is really meant to kind of cover the basics in a simple way and not to be the end of your journey in data analysis. If you run the function, you run a function with the printC argument more than once, or run multiple functions with that argument set equal to true. If you do it on the same day, it'll simply append that on to whatever your table output file is for that day. So it opens it up and adds more to it. So you can get a fairly long table output file. If you're running the commands over and over again, that page will get fairly long, but it's not going to overwrite the work. It'll just add to it. So you should feel free to run it more than once. If you create something and it's not quite to your liking, maybe you want fewer decimal places, or you want to change some labels or titles within the table or the plot, yeah, by all means, feel free to run it again. The file's not going to get a large file size, and the PNG files that are created for images are also very, very small in terms of memory on your machine. So no worries with running it again. Although my second point here with keeping your output organized, if you run it a lot and create a lot of images, along the way to your final product, at some point you may want to go back and delete some of the drafts that you created, so your uh, your working directories don't get too cluttered with a lot of files that you no longer need.